without any further ado.
Thank you. And I want to apologize for being late. As you said, I live in Eagle Rock, which is very close, so obviously when you're close, you think it's 5 minutes away, but it's never 5 minutes away. But I know, knowing realtors the way I know you guys, I know you didn't miss a beat. You jumped right into things, so I hope I didn't hold you up or anything. I do want to talk about PACE liens and solar leases. The dark side of PACE liens and solar leases. How many of you know what a PACE lien is? Okay, so not too many of you. Can any of you tell me what PACE stands for? No? Just blurt it out. No. Okay. So, well, that gives me a good idea where I need to start. So a PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. Okay? And we all know that there's a lot of talk about solar power and renewable energy and conserving energy, conserving water, and so on and so forth. And a lot of your clients, a lot of homeowners are installing solar panels and other types of energy efficiency improvements, whether they be insulated windows or certain types of water heaters, or I don't know all the technology, but there's a lot of things. It's not just solar panels. Solar panels are one of the ways that homeowners can improve their home, retrofit their home to save money on their energy bill, to conserve energy. But there are other types of things that they can do. Another one just popped into my head. Some people have electric cars, and they install the electric car chargers in their homes. So there's a variety of things that people are doing to kind of get with the spirit of saving energy. The catch to a lot of this stuff is it's really expensive. And some people have the money, and some people don't. So the question is, how do you finance this stuff? And there's a lot of different ways to finance these types of improvements, but one of the ways is a PACE lien. And PACE is a government program. As I mentioned, it stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's something that it's done on a nationwide basis. It's a national program, but it comes all the way down to the local government. So if the local government approves a PACE program, it's sort of authorizing residents within the community to take on these liens as a way to finance these improvements. And typically there's a third party involved. There's a private entity that offers the financing and makes the improvements, but it's sort of in partnership with the local government. And I'm not sure, I don't know, I guess I should have done my homework. I'm not exactly sure how much PACE activity you have in this area. But I know that there's more activity in different areas of the state than there are in other areas. It's not something that's sort of universal. So what's the problem with PACE? Sounds great, right? Well, let me back up a little bit. Let me explain it in a little bit more detail. And I also want to just do a little disclaimer. I don't usually like to give disclaimers because I want you to know that, I want you to feel like I know what I'm talking about. But I'm not a lawyer. I want you to know I'm not an attorney. I'm not with our legal department. I'm a political guy, legislative guy, and because this does involve government, I'm familiar with these programs. But we have other people on staff who can really drill down to the sort of the minutia of this. Of course, they're in Sacramento, so I got assigned to do this. So there may be some questions that I might not be able to answer. But we do have a Q&A. CAR has provided a legal Q&A that's available to all of you on our website, and I actually brought a copy of it. It's called PACE Programs and Solar Leases. It looks like this. I printed it out. So if you do run into one of these and you have some really specific questions, you can always go on our website, look at the Q&A, read through it. I read through it. It's several pages, pretty long. It goes into all the detail. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of disclaimer. But let's talk about what is PACE. So basically, the classic example, you have a homeowner wants to put on solar panels. The idea behind putting on solar panels, I mean, obviously there's a feel-good incentive, right? You want to help the environment. You want to save energy. But there's a pocketbook incentive. You want to save money. And, for example, me, I would love to have solar panels on my home, but my electricity bill is so low, I don't really have much of an incentive, right? I live in Los Angeles. I have LADWP. I actually looked into it. I almost did it. I almost did a solar lease. But when I compared the numbers, I wasn't going to save any money. So as much as I feel strongly about saving the environment, I also am a homeowner and I want to save money. It didn't make sense. So for most people, if it's kind of a money proposition, and if it doesn't add up, there's really no reason to do it. So PACE liens are one way to make it more sort of enticing and provide an incentive for people. Basically how it works is you have these solar panels or other types of energy improvements installed on your home, on your roof, and typically these things can cost $20,000 or more, right? That's a lot of money. But you pay back, instead of paying for it up front, you pay it off as an assessment. It goes on your tax bill, and you pay it off when you pay your property taxes. And the idea is that you're going to save so much money on your electricity bill that you won't mind paying it off, whether it's on your tax bill or anything else. But in this case, you're paying it off on your tax bill, okay? Sounds great, right? The average homeowner thinks, okay, fine, I won't even notice it. I won't even think about it. Well, it's not that simple, and that's where the dark side comes in. And I should also say, dark side. Realtors, speaking for realtors as a community, realtors are not opposed to solar power. They're not opposed to people saving money. They're not opposed to PACE liens necessarily, but they are opposed to some aspects of it and the problems that it presents for homeowners. So what are the problems? You get the solar panels installed on your roof, you're saving electricity, the bill goes on your tax lien and you got to pay it twice a year, right? Well, there's a problem right there because some people aren't going to think about that. Tax bill comes twice a year. You don't really think about it. You're not maybe saving the money every month, the money you save on your power bill, unless you're really disciplined. Maybe you're not going to set aside that money every month, so you'll be able to make that payment twice a year when the time comes. That's one of the issues. And that speaks to the larger issue, which is that homeowners, in a lot of cases, are not really being adequately informed about all these particulars and how this works. And the real problem comes when a homeowner wants to sell. So you have a homeowner and they've installed solar panels, they took out a PACE lien, they went through one of these companies like Hero is a name you may have heard, or Y Green is another company that offers these PACE liens. And they put it on their roof and they think everything's great, they've increased their property values, and then a couple years later, 5 years later, they still haven't paid it off because it takes maybe 20 years to pay off. They want to sell and it becomes a problem. Why has it become a problem? Does anybody know? I know you do, Lee. Well, okay, I heard the word subordinate. That's exactly the issue. It's a lien. It's a tax assessment. So you understand how that works. When you have a tax lien, that takes precedent over any mortgages if there's any delinquencies. And that's the problem. That's where the problem lies. And we've tried to address that. This has been going on for years. We've had a lot of negotiations with the companies, try to get them to make adjustments, and it goes all the way up to the federal level. But this is where the issue comes in. Somebody wants to sell, okay, well, first of all, it could be a problem even before you sell, because in some cases, in some instances, you've violated the terms of your mortgage. You've taken on an encumbrance that supersedes the mortgage that you already have. So that's problem number one. And people don't know that. Problem number two is you turn around and try to sell. And a new buyer wants to get financing for the house, and it has this lien on it. Well, the new buyer might not be able to get financing because the buyer's potential lender is going to say, well, no way. We're not going to take second position for a tax lien for solar panels. Okay? So I see a lot of nodding heads, so I think you guys all get it. That's really the problem. That's it right there. So then the question is, well, what do we do about it? There have been a lot of attempted solutions, a lot of discussion about subordination. Just to give you another little detail, at the federal level, FHFA, which is the agency that manages the secondary mortgage market, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, their policy is that they will not purchase mortgages that have one of these PACE liens superseding their loan. Well, I'm going to let you ponder that for a few seconds. You can understand the consequences there. How many mortgages are purchased by Fannie or Freddie? What percentage of the mortgage market does that represent? So that's the problem. That's the dark side. Okay. What have we done to try to fix that? Well, we've tried to address, well, first of all, there have been a lot of negotiations with FHFA. They're not budging. Their policy remains the same. Okay. They will not finance, they will not purchase mortgages that are financing a home that has a PACE lien on it. Okay. It's my understanding that FHA is a little more open to it. They have a policy. I have a mortgagee letter here. And it's at the bottom of my stack somewhere. Oh, here it is. Mortgagee letter from earlier this summer that basically says that it's from HUD. And for those of you who work with clients who have FHA loans, you'll understand how this works. And there is, if you want to go on the internet, look this up, HUD mortgagee letter 2016-11 from July of this year. They will accept PACE liens, okay? But FHFA, Fannie and Freddie, will not, okay? And I just lost my train of thought. But so yeah, we've negotiated. We've tried to negotiate. The organized real estate has tried to negotiate with the secondary mortgage market, but we haven't gotten anywhere with that. So what is the practical solution? If you have a client that gets involved in one of these things, what do? What happens? They got to pay it off. Exactly. Somebody sells their home. They get a buyer, you know, et cetera, et cetera. They can't get financing. What are they going to do? Well, the only way they can do it is to pay off the balance, which could be a lot of money, right? So that's the problem, and there have been a lot of issues in a lot of communities where deals have fallen through because either the seller didn't want to pay it off or didn't have the means to pay it off, or the buyer didn't want to get into it or couldn't get the financing. That's the problem. There's been a lot of sort of half solutions. We had legislation in Sacramento that would have done two things. It would have required these liens to be subordinated to the mortgage, but that provision did not pass. But the second provision passed, and I'm going to read it to you here, which is to basically require a TRID-like disclosure on these loans. So at least people will understand what they're getting into when they take on one of these liens. And this is a bill that was signed by the governor. And the bill number doesn't really matter anymore because now it's signed into law. But it basically says that, where'd it go? Okay, this measure will require TRID-like disclosure be provided to a property owner participating in a PACE program, a 3-day right of rescission, and a notice that the property owner may not be able to refinance or sell without paying off the PACE loan. So that provision is now part of California law. So at least we have some openness and some transparency, a disclosure requirement, but the subordination issue has not been resolved. That's not changed. The other thing that I can talk about is solar leases, which is a different type of financing, where you basically, and this was something that as a homeowner I looked into, but as I was saying before, it didn't make sense from a money standpoint mathematically. The lease payments were still going to be more than my power payments, so there was no reason for me to do it. But a lease payment is somebody comes in, a company comes in, installs solar panels. You don't own it, you don't buy it, but you lease the panels from them, just like you lease a car. And there have been some issues with those, some similar types of issues, especially when the home is changing hands. You know, will the new buyer be able to qualify for the lease? Does the new buyer want to qualify for the lease? Does the seller want to just pay it off? Are there penalties? So there's some issues there, but my very simple, basic understanding is that it hasn't presented the same kind of problems that the PACE liens have presented. You know, and we did a lot of research on this. We had a lot of discussion, and the leases did not really appear to be a problem. So that's kind of my very simple characterization of that type of financing. But the PACE liens still kind of an issue. A number of local associations in the state have taken positions out in the inland valleys and the Inland Empire. The associations out there, there's a lot of activity on this for reasons I'm not exactly sure why it's so big out there. I mean, I don't know, is it hotter out there? There's more, I don't know why that is, but that's just sort of the epicenter, and they've had a lot of discussion and a lot of negotiation and a lot of talking with the PACE companies, and they took policies to oppose these liens until changes were made. And I think those negotiations and the politicking is still ongoing. I think maybe they've reached some kind of agreement on some points, but it's still an issue out there, and in some other parts of the state as well. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I'm not sure what your time is, but if you guys want to ask me questions, I'm happy to field your questions, but that's basically the issue. Yeah?
Make sure the buyer or the owner understand what is going on.
Well, that's what I was saying. We just passed a law that that puts a disclosure requirement. So when a seller, or excuse me, when an owner gets one of these liens, they'll be fully informed about everything that's going on. So I think we've addressed that as far as the disclosure aspect of it. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, what is the website that we should be looking into?
Well, the first place you can start is you can start with the CAR website, which is car.org. And I'm assuming everybody here is a member, so you have access to the website because it's a members-only website. There's a legal section. If you follow the navigation on our website, there's different sections, different information. One of them is legal. I think it's just called CAR Legal. And you follow the navigation there, and you'll see legal Q&As. And you'll see this Q&A, which I printed out. And it's called, very simply, PACE Programs and Solar Leases. And this is a Q&A. It's about, geez, it's like 10 pages long or something. 15 pages from our lawyers. Try to anticipate every question that you might have if you're involved in a transaction and an answer to those questions. I think that's a good place to start, especially if you're involved in a transaction, you have a client, and you got the details of that transaction. This would be a good place to start, and then you could call our legal hotline if you still don't have answers to all your questions. Yes, in the back.
I have an audience asking me to ask you, is PACE lien be show up in the pre-lien report? I mean, pre-lien title?
It's supposed to. It's supposed to. But there have been some comments that it's not always being recorded in a timely manner. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to show up in the title report. It's supposed to show up on the property records. But there have been some issues where it didn't. So I think that's just sort of a reality check. It's supposed to, but maybe people aren't doing it, or it's not. The process isn't working as well as it should. My advice to you is, if you have a client, you're a listing agent, and you have a client that has solar panels, that, find out as much as you can about how it was financed, and make sure you cover everything. Yeah.
Will it show up in the supplemental tax report?
It should. It should. Okay. Yeah. Another question.
Government has any financial support? It's not a payment support, it's a financial support. They give how much?
Well, there are other types of programs to pay for these things. If you have a client that wants to put on solar panels, there are other ways to pay for this. I think the classic way, another problem I didn't mention is that the PACE liens don't necessarily offer the best terms of financing. The interest rates are higher, they have other fees, and they might be better off just taking out if they have equity, take out a home equity loan to pay it off. Or there are other types of programs. The state, when this became an issue, the state of California created some sort of a program. It's in this Q&A to provide financing for people who get into these situations where they are forced to pay off the lien to sell their home, and it was supposed to provide financing. But my understanding is it hasn't been very effective. I think maybe the amounts aren't enough or something. I'm not sure. But so there are different types of financing sources. Yes.
From my point of view, I see solar panel sounds good in the industry, but on my point of view, it's you prepay your electric bill for a few years.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, my basic opinion on this, I'm a big advocate for that. I think it's great. We hear all the talk about climate change, and it makes sense. But I just think we haven't reached a point where it's affordable. And it's like calculators and computers, and right, it's just really expensive, but someday it won't be. Someday, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe in my daughter's lifetime, we're all gonna drive electric cars, we're all gonna have solar panels, everything's gonna be digital and electric, and everything will be great, but we're just not there yet. So, yeah, in the back.
Question regarding the rebates. I know on a purchase, you get your rebates back from the federal government. Is there any rebates for any of the lease or the PACE or the HERO program?
I'm not sure. I think there are certain tax credits and there are tax credits, but I'm not exactly sure how that works. Yeah, I'm not sure. And it depends on what kind of program you get. Sometimes the company that installs it gets the rebates. So it kind of depends. And I think it talks a little bit about that in this Q&A. If you have access to our Q&A, there's some talk about that in there. But I don't know that much about the details, so I apologize. Yeah? Okay.